Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Social Media News Live. So excited. This is going to be a fun one. Joe and I have crossed paths many times through our Ecamm friends, and also he came to one of the meetups at Disney. Everybody here is a Disney fan, so you may get some Disney references today. Just going to give you a fair warning. Speaking of Disney, Connor Brown, how are things in the great city of Orlando?
They are awesome. Fellas, it's March Madness. I assume our brackets are already busted, even though we're less than a day into
Probably.
This thing. But I got my Maryland pride. Go Turtles. Let's get it done.
All right. Well, we'll just put you in a corner a little bit. This is all about Joe actually for today. So Joe, how are you, my friend?
I'm well. My bracket traditionally gets busted on day one, so I didn't even bother this year. I was like, I can't get any wrong if I don't make any guesses. So
That's right. That's right. So we're gonna, you guys, as we're going today, we're talking all about automations, and Joe is a master at this. I've been digging into his podcast. It's really, really good. I'm really excited because he's a Todoist fan. I know that you use that. And I just finished a podcast episode where you're talking about creating your own CRM with Notion, which I love to do. I love Notion as well. So this is going to be fun. So as we're going along today, make sure you guys ask your questions down below. Ask your questions because we want to make the show all about you. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and hit go on the podcast machine, and we will get started. Hello, folks. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Connor Brown, and this is a show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and more.
You ever wondered what it really takes to run a business without feeling overwhelmed? Maybe you're looking for ways to get more done in less time without working around the clock. Or maybe you're tired of feeling buried under a never-ending to-do list and want a smarter way to manage it all. If that sounds like you, then you are in for a great conversation, because today we're sitting down with someone who has mastered the art of systems and automation. He has built a business that runs smoothly while still making time for what matters most. Joe Casabona will be sharing his best strategies for streamlining workflows, saving hours each week, and creating space in your business and life. So sit back, clear your schedule, clear your mind, and get ready for this week's episode of Social Media News Live. Joe, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. What a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh, wait, there is more. Connor Brown.
There is so much more, because if you don't know who Joe is, you should. Joe is a systems and automations coach who helps overwhelmed solopreneur parents save time and create more space in their lives. With 2 decades of experience in web development, teaching, and podcasting, Joe knows how to streamline the chaos of running a business and balancing family life. His podcasting systems have saved him 10 plus hours a week, earning $30,000 to $50,000 annually in sponsorships and reaching 60,000 monthly downloads. When he's not coaching or podcasting, Joe spends time with his family, watches Star Wars, or talks way too much about the evil empire. I'm sorry, I mean the New York Yankees. Unfortunate there. But other than that, Yankees aside, welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks so much. You are in Orlando, and so are you a Rays fan or?
So it gets even worse because my whole family's from Boston. So go Sox. But I will say, there's a strong possibility that those Rays are going to move to Orlando. We'll see.
Yeah,
now, Connor, you just need to you stick to the script. All right, come on, quit going off script. Jeez,
Right.
Come on. But speaking of sponsorships, we want to give a big shout out to our friends over at Ecamm. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. You can save 15% on your first purchase. They just released version 4.4, I think it is, and they've got some very cool stuff like motion transitions, all sorts of new things. If you haven't checked them out, make sure you go to ecamm.com/Jeff. We appreciate them for sponsoring the show. And speaking about amazing things and people, we've got our friends showing up. We've got Dustin Stout actually coming in twice. I don't know. He's just got 2 keyboards or something. Magi's waving hi, as well as Dustin himself. So appreciate that. And our friend Gary Stockton is here too, saying happy Friday, gents. Happy Friday to you as well, Gary. I appreciate you always stopping by and giving us some love. But we're going to jump right into the show because I love automations. I'm always about trying to streamline my tool set and efficiencies. I mean, I'm big friends with Eric Fisher, who does the Beyond the To-Do List podcast. Joe has a amazing podcast, and we're going to be talking about that later. But I want to get right into it, Joe, because you specialize in helping solopreneurs save time and create these workflows. So you talk about reclaiming time through systems. So what's the first system or process you think that every entrepreneur, solopreneur should set up to make the biggest impact?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think it's really gonna depend on the person, their skill level, and how they work. You mentioned Todoist, and so one of my favorite things to use Todoist for, or one of the reasons I like Todoist the best, is because it is open and you can basically send tasks to it from anywhere. You can email them in, you can set up a Zapier automation. And so um, if you are looking to kind of keep tabs on the things that you have to do, automating easy task and capture and management is probably the best way to go.
So you mentioned Zapier, and that's one of those kind of like if this then that system automations, and we'll probably dive into that a couple times today. Is there a reason that you like? I know you mentioned this podcast, Maker, or is it Make? I can't remember which one it was.
Make.com.
Make is better than Zapier, and why you choose one over the other?
Yeah, that. So I like Make.com better because, I mean, first of all, I think it looks prettier. But it is feature to feature pretty similar, and it's a lot more affordable. And I'm all for paying for tools that help you, but if two things basically do the same thing and one's like 90% cheaper, I'm gonna go with that one. Now I will say for most people, I recommend starting with Zapier, because the reason Make is cheaper is because the learning curve is higher.
Oh, okay.
So you do need a little know-how to manage Make a little more than with Zapier.
Gotcha.
They're both great. I use Zapier all the time. I mean, it's just like, I wish something could do this. Guess what? It probably can with the help of Zapier. Again, a little bit of a learning curve, but it is awesome. Joe, we kind of talked about, the importance of having a system where you can just put things from your head into it, where you can then act on it later. And I think so many entrepreneurs and creators struggle with that decision fatigue, right? They don't know what branch to go into. They don't know, how to reduce the mental load that they have up here and make a decision. So how do you think systems just in general can help, reduce mental load and overall just make business operations go much, much, much smoother?
So my favorite podcast, bar none, is Cortex. It's by CGP Grey and Mike Hurley. It's amazing. CGP Grey, y'all might know from his explainer videos on YouTube. But one of the things that they talk about every year is doing a yearly theme. And this year, my yearly theme is the year of being more present, because I haven't felt like a very present father. I'll give myself some credit and say I think I'm more present than a lot of parents, because when I'm out in public, I try not to be on my phone so much. But one of the reasons I didn't feel very present is because I would work up until the moment that I have to go get my kids from daycare or school, and then I would be thinking about all of, what I call and what others call open threads, right? Like things that I didn't finish. And so I'd be doing something, cooking dinner or like taking the dog out or whatever. And I'd be thinking about work instead of being present with my family. And a way to kind of brain dump is making the idea and thought capture as easy as possible with a good system. For me, the goal is I want to be able to shout into the ether at my digital assistant, right? I won't say any names and activate any devices, but I want to be able to shout, I have an idea or I have open threads, and capture everything I say and put it in the right spot, which is why I don't just say like make a new note. I'll say I have open threads, and then it'll put it in my open threads section of the shutdown routine in Obsidian for me, right? So
Hmm.
um, that's, if you're just starting, that's really complicated. Making a new note is fine, but for me, like, the goal is make capture as easy as possible. I want to be able to type. I want to be able to shout. I want to be able to talk to my watch, like whatever it is, wherever I am, I need to be able to capture ideas in whatever context I'm in.
Awesome. I love that, because I think one of the things as creators that if you look and you kind of survey most creators, they don't capture thoughts down. And that's why they struggle when it's time to put out content. It's like, but if you're doing what you just mentioned, constantly filling that bucket, I think that you're way ahead of a lot of your competition. So one of the things, and I don't remember where you said it at exactly, is that, and you were talking about you want to be there for your kids. You said that you've been able to take 6 weeks off after the birth of your child without any business interruptions. That sounds like heaven to so many people who are thinking about having kids. Can you walk us through some of those key systems that made that possible? You mentioned like a couple of them right there, but what allowed you to do that? I mean, did you have like a big on-ramp that you were really trying to get going because you knew this timeline was coming and you had like 6 months you were working up to that? Or did you just slowly start to bring in these integrations with systems?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound incredibly weird, in that I got a little lucky because 12 months, 11 months earlier, I had a panic attack. It was November 2020 is when this happened. My wife is a nurse, and so she was working. I had 2 of my 3 children at home. Um, well, I had 2 children. The third one hadn't come yet. And I wasn't able to work as much as I could, and I'm still the primary income generator in the family. My business brings in probably like 60, it's close, but like 60% of our income.
Right.
And so one day I start to feel my first and only panic attack come on, and I'm sitting on the kitchen floor like crying, and my oldest, who was 3 at the time, comes over to me with a bottle of water and says, "It's okay, Daddy. Everything's gonna be okay." And I thought, "Man, that is not okay. Like, I'm supposed to be taking care of you." Um, and so the next day I could work, I made a list of everything that I do for my business, and I put a line through everything I personally don't have to do. And I made a promise that I would delegate or automate anything I don't have to do. Because in November 2020, this is well past the 6 weeks it would take for the lockdown to be over, right?
Right.
And so we didn't really know how long it was going to be. Um, and turns out that a couple months later, we found out about my youngest, Abby. She was not planned. My younger 2 kids are 15 months apart. And so I had already mostly had these systems in place by the time we found out she was coming. And I just really optimized them. And so some of them are automations, right? Someone fills out a form to come on my podcast, and they get put into my podcast planning system so I could see at any time, when the well of new episodes will dry up. Um, I had a sponsor outreach system because sponsorship was still my primary form of income.
Mm-hmm.
And during the pandemic, a lot of people had event budgets that they had to spend. So I had a pretty good system for doing the outreach as quickly and easily as possible while still making it personalized. And then I had my VA. And so the the biggest thing, I talk about automations a lot because I think people get nervous about delegating, but the combination of automating to do task management and communication with my VA, who can do all the things that automation can't, is a really potent combination. And so when I was gone, my VA handled everything I needed her to, everything that needed to happen to keep the wheels on the truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, some of that is publishing the show. The sponsorship stuff I had kind of, luckily I was able to like backlog, but any content updates and things like that, she was able to handle. And so those were the main systems. It was like a lot of pre-planning and then real-time reaction by my VA for anything that I couldn't foresee, we'll say.
Gotcha.
I love how and Dustin from Magi says delegate or automate. Love that, and it's so true, right? Joe, I loved how you talked about you wrote out the list and you're like, what's the thing that I have to do versus someone else can do or automate, and you cross it out, right? You go line by line, and I think that's a great first place to start for a lot of people. But solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, they're doing everything, right? They go into their business because they're an expert at one thing, and they end up having to do all the other things too. So it's you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, content creator, maybe accounting, right? There's so much other things that you now have to do. So Joe, when someone comes to you and you're helping them set up these automations or you're working with clients, how do you help them prioritize and think through what are you going to automate first?
The big thing is a mindset shift, because I think, we're solopreneurs because we like to do, or entrepreneurs in general, we like to do our own thing. I know that I had to get over this, but I was bad at delegating because I thought that I could do it better than everybody else. And like group projects in college reinforced that idea for me, right?
Mhm.
So it's the biggest thing I try to help people with first is mindset shift. You don't have to do everything yourself. In fact, there are people who can do most of the things you're doing for yourself better than you can. Um, or they'll say like my process is too complicated. My podcast publishing process has always had like 4 or 5 different publication destinations. We would publish on my audio host first. We'd grab the embed, we'd upload it to YouTube, we'd put all of that into WordPress. And then on the day it comes out, we would publish it in Spotify too. When I had a membership show, we had a different process for that. All really complicated, but it's still step-by-step instructions, right? And it's not like we're building IKEA furniture where it doesn't make any
That's
sense and
right.
it feels like we're missing some screws.
Right.
And
I
so
miss some.
my VA does that better than I do now. Like when I have to do it, if she's like away on vacation or something and I didn't get an episode to her in time, um, I do it wrong the first try because I don't check the instructions because I made them. And then I'm like, oh right, I forgot to do this part. So um that's the first thing I would have you consider. And then when it comes to automating, I would say pick some low-hanging fruit, right? If you're sending information from one app to another,
Mm.
that is a great candidate for automation, right? When I say, "Hey assistant, I have open threads," my Apple shortcut takes what I say, breaks it into new line, treats each new line as a task, and then puts it in both Obsidian because of my shutdown routine. I like it's like a daily journal for me. But it also takes those things and puts them in the inbox in Todoist because that's where I manage my tasks. So like Jeff, you said earlier, content creators like sit and they don't necessarily have ideas when they're ready to make content. I have a content creation list with 13 ideas on it right now. So if I ever sit down and I'm like, what am I going to do? Let's see. Cal workflow to send link, cal.com workflow to send link based on an answer. Great. So I can make a video on how to do that.
Yeah.
Make
That's
that video.
so I want to go back a little bit because I know a lot of solopreneurs, and it's funny 'cause you said your daughter's named Abby, and I have an Abby who started working for me a couple of months ago, and she's working for me full time. She graduated, so it's awesome. But I'm learning how much I have to delegate and how hard it is. But you also mentioned VAs, and I know a lot of solopreneurs think, "Oh my gosh, that would be amazing to have somebody do tasks that I don't want to do. I can do them probably faster." But I have no idea where to start. Do I hire from this company? There's all these VA companies. There's all these people promising that they can do all this stuff for you, and it can be overwhelming. So when somebody says, "Joe, I know I want to take some of your processes, and I know I need a VA," where do I go? Like, where do I start to at the beginning to look for one of those people?
Yeah, for sure. So it depends on the kind of VA you want. There are different skill levels, right? My VA is based in the Philippines. English is her second language. And for me, it was really like kind of offload some of the um uh I don't want busy work is not the right word, but like the
Mhm.
things that have to get done but don't require like the critical thinking of
Yeah,
the
Right.
business. And so, those tasks are very, here are the inputs, here's what the output should look like. I don't want to do this, and I can't automate this, right? Like I can't automate the podcast publishing process I just said. Or I can't automate a lot of it, right? Like Spotify doesn't let you send videos via RSS feed or something like that.
Mhm.
Um so for me, I went to onlinejobs.ph. Um
Mm.
just a heads up, if you um if if you post a job there, you will get like thousands of
Yep.
responses. So,
Gotcha.
um, what I did was just kind of like scan them quickly, find the 5 I liked the best, and and give them a sample project, right?
Mm.
Gotcha.
And again, with that level of VA, it's got to be, here are the inputs, here's what the output should be, or here's what I'm expecting the output to be. And I picked one based on that. It worked out because I hired her in, I want to say like December 2020, right? One of the first
Mhm.
things I did post panic attack. Um, and uh, so that's been working out for me. You got to have a really good system in place and understand kind of what they're trying to, or what they're able to do, right? Because like one of the tasks I gave her was find conference for me to speak at,
Mm.
and that was a very nebulous task. And like, so she didn't know what I could speak on, and she found a lot of
Mhm.
conferences that were ones I wasn't either wasn't willing to travel to or had already happened. So like, so that was a learning opportunity for me. If you're looking for something above that where like they can manage your QuickBooks account or
Yeah.
manage your email,
Right.
then I would try to find somebody um uh in the country where you're operating.
Mhm.
My friend Jordan has a Canadian based company that does a lot of like higher level VA stuff, especially around marketing. And so that's still going to be the same. Like we'll chat, I think like virtual assistants or online business manager is, I think, another term that's used.
Mhm.
Um, and looking for folks like those who have the skill set you're looking for is your best bet there. So like I can't say like go to this one place, but I can say look for like the combination of virtual assistant plus marketing, or online business manager
Sure.
plus client relations. That's what I would do to find the next level up.
Yeah.
And we've got real quick, Connor. The Rich Graham says that they've changed that so applicants have a limited number of credits that they use to apply for jobs. The more they use to apply, the more they use, the more they're serious. So that's a great tip. Thanks, Rich. Um,
Ooh,
how long
that's
did
great.
how long did it take you to find the VA that you went with? Did you have to do a lot of auditioning? I guess that would be the term.
Yeah, I think, I'm impatient. I'm from New York, and so I want everything to happen quickly. Um, and so I think I did like a round of 3 and 3, and then my VA, her name's Anna. Her results were really good, and her application was the best. It was like, I think the subject was like, "Please hire me," so my mom stops asking me what I do. And I thought
That's funny.
that was just really
I just
funny, and so,
I
like,
need
the
to do that to
combo of,
my
like,
mom.
humor
Yeah.
and yeah, right? And I still don't, my parents are like, "What do you do?" Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
work on the internet."
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, her results plus her application, um, made it, like, a pretty easy win for me.
Very cool.
That's awesome. As we kind of transition into, using automation to not only create more content, but also, monetize it and get it working for you. One thing we have to ask is, Joe, you produce, I think, 3 podcasts and you raise 3 small kids. So basically you have a podcast for each kid. That's great. I think that makes total sense. Um, with so much going on with family life and business life, and then also content creation on top of that, what are your core systems when it comes to creating content for each of those podcasts that just keeps everything running smoothly, so you're not also, eating into family time and those sorts of things. So your core systems for that.
Yeah, so I'll start with maybe least to most amount of work, I think.
Yeah.
So my local podcast is called Start Local. Um, I have 2 other co-hosts, and the reason I want to be a part of that podcast is they are much more. I moved to Chester County, PA, a few years ago. That's where my wife's family lives, and I don't have a network here. And so one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast was to kind of increase visibility among business owners in the area. And so really my co-hosts Liam and Eric do a lot of the day-to-day stuff for that one, right? They figure out who the guests are going to be. They do the outreach for that and they prep the show notes. I am there as a co-host when needed, but then I also put in my system, like my underlying system to get things to my editor and my VA to do the actual publishing and stuff. And so for that one, it's a relatively light lift for me. I'll come on the show sometimes, but that is like I put part of a system in place, at least for us um to keep the show running smoothly. Um, the middleist show was called Podcast Workflows for a while. Now it's called Streamline Podcaster to fall in line with my brand. And that's like a medium amount of work because it's mostly it's like all solo episodes
Mm.
or recorded public coaching calls, right? So I'll do like a coaching call with somebody. I'll ask them if I can release it on the show, and if they say yes, I release it. And so those are, again, mostly solo episodes. So it's me taking a blog post I wrote and kind of expounding upon it or expanding upon it for audio and video purposes. And I record that in Ecamm Live, and I have this really good recording setup. So usually I'm like a one take kind of guy, as far as like knowing what I'm talking about and being able to deliver it. Very light edits there, and then I push that out. And then Streamline Solopreneur, my main show, I've been doing more solo episodes for that, but there's still the kind of expected quality and format for that show. That's like 9 years old at this point. I rebranded it last year and renamed it from what it was called. But there is like the whole process is in place, right? So I book something with a guest, they go into Notion, I record with them on Riverside. I move their recordings into my needs editing folder. My editor gets an email. He puts it back in the production folder. My VA gets an email tracking all of the statuses, all of that happening automatically. And then even with the solo episodes, usually I won't need my editor for that because again, I do a one shot, and then if I need to rephrase something, that's pretty easy to edit out. But that still goes off to my VA for the publishing side of things. So that's lots of systems based on my level of involvement in the show.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I
That is
had a follow-up question for
Yeah.
for that too, because I know, Joe, you've talked a lot about you use Todoist and Notion. I kind of want to know, how do those two work together, and what goes into Todoist that you wouldn't put into Notion? Because I know a lot of people are gravitating towards starting to use Notion as a task management system and like a content creation system and storage and all that. So how do you differentiate the two?
Yeah, I love this question. I used to try to be an all-in-one tool
Yeah.
kind of guy. And then I thought like I wouldn't use a Swiss Army knife to like screw the screws in on my deck, right? Or I
Right.
wouldn't use a Swiss Army knife to like cut my steak.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't even use like the tweezers, right? If I had the option, I would pick a better version of that tool. And so for me, I tried putting my tasks in Notion, but the notifications, I don't have a lot of notifications on my phone. I hate having notifications
Yeah.
on my phone. And so, I think like the The Notion mobile app especially is just okay, kind of slow, especially if you have a lot of stuff in Notion. And the reminders happen, but they're not as persistent as I'd like them to be, or they're not as um in my face as I'd
Right.
like them to be when I need them to be, right? And so Todoist is purpose built for task management. Easy to get a lot of stuff. And that's it. Like Notion, like their automations just got better, but like they're still just okay. They have that homepage where I guess you can have like you can pick one database to surface your tasks, but Notion Todoist is much, much better for that. Right? There are views and filters, and I have possibly hundreds of tasks in Todoist right now, but I never see hundreds of tasks. I have 107 tasks in Todoist right now. I always see at most 5 or 6
Right.
because of how I filtered everything, right?
Right.
Notion is great for project management for me.
Yeah.
Especially when I need to share stuff with my VA. And so I use Notion to do project management and CRM stuff. Things where there are statuses and lots of information and notes, and maybe I need to bring in my VA, or maybe I need to share a proposal with someone in my CRM. Notion's great for that. And then for note taking, I'm working on an episode for this right now because I know people who will use Notion for task management and note taking and project management. I tried using Notion for note taking and it was really slow on my phone, like too slow on my phone, right? And so for note taking, I usually just use Apple Notes because that's the fastest. I use Obsidian for PKM or personal knowledge management, right? And so usually I'm capturing things in Apple Notes and then I'm moving over to Obsidian if they need action. And so I have many thoughts in Obsidian and my most recent thoughts in Apple Notes. And that's going to sound complicated for a lot of people, but I'm not using a monolith and I have very clear purposes for each of those things.
That's awesome. That's kind of what I use. Notion, I use kind of my building a second brain kind of thing with, Thiago Forte's kind of stuff. And I use Notion for that. I have Jay Klaus's templates and I also have a Thomas Franklin. So I have kind of this really weird thing that works for me. Like I have my personal brand kind of on Jay Klaus's kind of templates. And then I have like all my clients on Thomas Frank's, which probably is not the best way. I know my friend Kat Mulville, and I think you know her too.
Yeah.
She'd get on all over me for that. But that's how I use it. And I think using the tools that works the best for you. I like to use Notes too, as I'm out, to just capture. It's easy, it's seamless, and I can move it to whatever I need to. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is we've got the tasks, we've talked about VAs, and we've got systems behind that, like putting out a podcast or, creating content. But many creators struggle with like consistency. Like, do you have any tools or automation tools that you recommend for streamlining like your podcast production and publishing? I mean, you mentioned your assistants, your digital assistants that you can just talk to. Are there any other things that help you become and can keep being consistent?
Yeah, so I think with any sort of consistency or anything that we're trying to kind of make a habit of, friction is the thing that prevents us from doing it, right? And so like I'm the type of guy who will say I like to exercise, but if there is the tiniest of friction in getting to the gym or going for a run, I'm like, well, I guess it's not like I have a walking pad behind me, like on the floor behind me. And if it gets like past 2:00 and I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get my kids soon anyway, I better finish up work. That's enough friction for me to not literally turn around and walk on the treadmill that's behind me.
Right.
Like if I take like 5 steps back, I'll trip on it. Right. So it's not about like getting to it. It's about what friction is preventing me from making time for it.
Yeah.
When it comes to content creation, I think there are a couple of big friction points for a lot of people. One is ideas. We talked about that, right? You can set up a shortcut on your phone, or just like open a new note. Like, there's like a quick note button, I suspect definitely on iPhone, probably on Android too, where you can make idea capture as easy as possible. Even if it's just the title of the note,
Mhm.
you'll have a list somewhere of ideas as you think of them, right? Or get into the habit of when somebody in your audience asks you a question, screenshot it and put it somewhere, because that's a great idea for content. Once you have the ideas, it becomes a producing thing. And I think a lot of people see Jay or Justin or Kat and say, well, I can't make content like that, so I shouldn't make content, right? But there's a guy, I'm a huge baseball fan, as we've discussed or discovered. There's a guy on YouTube, his name is Foolish Bailey. He's like probably like a mid 20 something or maybe early 20 something guy. His videos are shot, I'm almost certain, with the built-in camera in his bedroom. You can see his bed in the frame. And his videos do well because the content is great. He talks about like wins above replacement for pitchers or whatever, and then he says like B WAR and F WAR and things that even somebody as deeply embedded in baseball as I am like barely understand. And he understands them really well and he explains them really well. And so his videos do well. Where you start can be different from where you want to be, right? We're not building a skyscraper, and so we don't need to get it perfectly right on the first try. If you look at my first videos, it's me like I'm like looking up at the camera like this, and you can see my
Yeah.
bed, and I'm like, "Hi, welcome to WP in 1 month," right? It's just like it's not. I didn't look at the camera there because it was a weird angle, but it's like you got to start somewhere. You can't get better until you know where you need to get better.
Mhm.
And so tools like Ecamm Live make video editing so much easier, right? Jeff, you've been doing all of this stuff. I assume you got the control panel. So
Yeah.
you've been doing all of this stuff in Ecamm Live in real time. I assume you probably have a Stream Deck, but maybe
Yeah.
that's a bad assumption.
2 of them.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, exactly. So finding the right tools. I learned about something called Gling.ai from Stephen Robles, and my video editing process was already pretty fast, and it is way faster with Gling.ai, right? It's not like perfect, and you can't just like throw it in and say, wow, I have a finished video now, but it does a lot of the work for you, and it's really easy to undo some of the work and then like do different work. Extremely impressive.
Mm.
Cuts my editing time in half, and it was already pretty short. And then the same thing with podcasts, right? Like we have lots of tools now for doing a video version, right, with Ecamm or some other thing. We have tools like Adobe Podcasts and Descript that will make editing
So easy.
easier. I
Yeah.
think you need to edit your podcast for sound quality leveling. This is live, right? So like
Mhm.
if I mess up, we're live. But if
Right.
you're doing something pre-recorded, get the right take. With something like Adobe Podcasts or Descript, or Gling.ai, it's really easy to take out the bad take. And so having the right tools and then setting aside time to actually do it, those are all things that are going to reduce friction. Everything else, like publishing, getting the thumbnail right, the perfect title, you can iterate on all of that later. We are so lucky to work
And
in a format that is so easy to iterate on. I could never build houses. I would mess them up so bad. And I'm Italian. I should be able to build stuff, right? But I can't. Like, so I'd be like destitute if I was born in the 50s. Yeah, my dad was born in the 50s. My dad like actually did real work with his hands. I can't do
Right.
that. So, there's a lot of just like finding the right tool and taking the first step. So again, it really does come back to mindset, but everything I just mentioned there will make it easier and maybe hopefully get you in the mindset to be like, wow, I can do this. It's not going to take me an entire day to make a 10-minute video.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
we're big fans of Descript here because that's what that has changed the way I've been doing editing since, Adobe Premiere 2. So it's been there for a while. So it is so amazing, the tools we have now.
I think, the importance of consistent content creation and just creating in general is one thing, but Joe, you put an emphasis on importance, and I think everyone here really wants to also make money from that, right? It can be a hobby and that's fine, but if we're doing it for our business, it needs to generate money. And you've, talked about how, you know, your podcast sponsorships can get $30,000 to $50,000 annually, and I think you probably have systems set up that make that a little bit easier to do, because managing sponsorships is a whole nother job in and of itself. So you mentioned having a CRM system in Notion and sending out deals. What kind of systems do you have in place to manage those sponsorships efficiently so that it's not eating up all your time and you continue to actually create the thing that they're paying you to do?
Yeah, so here's the secret, right? A lot of these systems I put in place free up my time to use my time to get sponsors, right? I know you had Justin Moore on a few
Mm-hmm.
weeks ago, and I was getting sponsorships before Justin, but Justin has really changed the way I approach sponsorships, and I'm a coach in his Wizards Guild now, um and so I, I'd like to say, like, yeah, there's a way to send out mass emails to a bunch of potential sponsors,
Right.
but my approach to sponsorship is similar to my approach to potential clients or customers. I want them to know that I don't just see them as a 30-second ad copy and a check.
Hmm.
I treat them as clients and partners. And so I do have systems in place, but they go into my CRM and I treat them like any other potential client. What are their goals? What is their budget? What are they looking to accomplish? How can I improve that? But it's but I can do that because I'm not publishing my podcast in 5 different places on Sunday night because I recorded it on Saturday and had to do the editing, right? So, like,
Right.
automation and delegation frees up your time, creates space in your life to focus on the things that you should focus on. And for me, focusing on cultivating relationships with sponsors is really important, because just like with anything, if you do a good job for your sponsor, and a good job doesn't have to mean hundreds of thousands of views, right? I'm sure Justin talked about the types of
Mm-hmm.
um, campaigns and different goals. Even if you don't get a ton of views or conversions that first time, if you form the relationship and you showed that you care and you showed you're willing to iterate on the next campaign, they're more likely to go with you again because you're good to work with. And that's the important bit of um, sponsorship for me. So as far as the system goes, they're in my CRM. I send them a personalized pitch. I have a text expander, like expansion, a snippet,
Mm-hmm.
for the stuff that is kind of fill in the blank. But a lot of it is like, hey, I saw that you posted this on Instagram. I also posted something like this. My audience wants more. Here's a couple of things that I could do for you. Um, so I hope that helped. I don't have like a quick fix for
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
I think
I think that's important.
I think the thing that I see so many creators do is they just want that paycheck and then they move on and they don't. It's always been a relationship for me. Like, we've talked about Ecamp's a big sponsor of this show, and I try to be in there like, hey, what can I help? What are you promoting? What can I do to do this? Oh, you want me to come speak at Creator Camp? Of course I'll do that. I try to be like you mentioned, Joe, a partner, not just some sort of transactional relationship. And I think if you're a creator, switching that mindset, like you had talked about, is so important and will actually make you more money down the line. So the next question I wanted to kind of dive into, because, the rise of AI, I don't know if you saw the thumbnail I created of you, like in AI. Yeah. It's just kind of a thing. It's fun to do. But as AI continues to grow and we have more and more of this AI kind of vomit that's out there where people are just trying to press the easy button and just like generating crap, how do you balance automation with personalization in that content creating? Like, especially when it comes to audience engagement, because I know some people can get so focused on like the automation and the sequences and getting it all done, and they lose their audience, and they lose what connected to them in the first place. So how do you balance those two things when you're setting up these systems?
Yeah, great question, right? And it really is, what can I automate so that I can show up better as a human being, right? Um, I'm sure you get a lot of terrible podcast pitches that all sound like this. Hey, Jeff, I just saw your latest episode with Joe Casabona. I love that you talked about single sentence AI summary of what you talked about.
That's right.
It reminds me of random client, and then just goes in talking about how great they are.
Mhm.
Like that, that is an at scale thing, right? And it's super obvious. When I pitch myself as a guest, I have a template for the things I talk about, because I generally want to talk about the same sort of things. But I always say something like, it looks to me like your audience is X, Y, and Z. Here's how I can help your audience with that understanding, right? Like, it looks like your audience is busy solopreneur parents, or it looks like your audience is new parents who are struggling to be present at their full-time job. Here's how I can help those people specifically. And when the person you're pitching or talking to or writing for feels seen and heard, that's going to make your content resonate. If you just want a listing of facts, fine. AI is great for that. But if you want something that will resonate, AI doesn't have any lived experience. It only has what it's learned from the content it's consumed. So be human, tell personal stories, resonate with the people you're talking to, and that's how you stand out. And that will always be true, because even if AI learned every single thing I've ever written about up until this moment, it doesn't know any of the things I didn't write about, and it doesn't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow.
Right.
And so it can't possibly write better than me.
That's awesome. So speaking of writing better than myself, I just like the video that I can not do this video without our friends over at Ecamm. See how seamless and smooth. AI couldn't have made that transition. Would it, Connor? No. So ecamm.com/Jeff. You can find out more about Ecamm there. That's what we're using to do this show. Joe uses it. Connor uses it. A lot of my friends. I saw that. Oh, my friend Lou Mongello is in the audience too. He's watching. And I know he's an Ecamm fam as well. So if you want to find out more, go to ecamm.com/Jeff. Use code Jeff15 to save 15% on your first purchase. So, Connor, I know you had a question. I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but go right ahead.
That's all right. We are as smooth as chunky peanut butter here.
That's right. It sticks to your craw.
So
That's
delicious.
Right. So, Joe, you also do coaching, but it's an interesting style that you do it. And I think you offer both of them, but there's often the traditional coaching, right? Where it's live calls, it's one-on-one sessions. Maybe you have a weekly, hour or something where you jump on a call and you do it face to face. But you have this on-demand kind of style of coaching where people can go to you when they need help, and you can respond when you, I guess, have the time to respond. What kind of made you develop that on-demand coaching style, and how have you seen it work well, not only for you, but for the clients that you're helping to coach as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is really something that was born out of understanding my audience, right? And I have 3 small kids, and I try to be a very present parent. And I also work from home, which means that if something happens at school, I'm most likely the person to get the call.
Right.
And it sucks when you have to cancel on someone last minute. My niche is my people, and so they understand, right? Most people, one guy gave me crap and said, like, good luck. And I said, we would never be if you can't even understand that I need to like cancel our meeting to go get my kid, that's fine. Go talk to Gary Vee and the other hustle bros. Like, I don't care. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But by and large, people are really understanding about it. Totally things come up. Family first, right? Family first is something I constantly say. My brothers actually have that tattooed on them. I don't, tattoos are not my thing, but they have it in Italian.
Oh, cool. That's very cool.
So, so with that in mind, I thought, why, why force people to pay me lots of money to potentially never be able to take a call, right? Or have to cancel frequently. Um, how can I give them access to my expertise and accountability without having to do it in real time? And there are lots of great tools that help me deliver a personalized experience. They get access to me. They can ask questions when it's convenient for them. That could be 2 a.m, right? While they're feeding their newborn. And I can answer them when it's convenient for me about an hour after I get home from school, and the taskmaster in me kind of calms down and the business person in me comes out. So it's really about convenience for my potential clients,
Hmm.
and the fact that they can pop in to ask questions whenever they want and trust that they'll get an answer. I say within 48 hours. I it's really hard for me to wait that long if I if I have an immediate
Right.
answer to a question. And it's great because it's convenient for everybody and they're getting the answers they need. And they're getting, they don't have to do the thing where I give them the Zoom call recording and then they transcribe it. They have their answers. They don't have to keep a list. They just ask and then I answer when I can.
So on that note, what kind of tools or automations are you using, like a Voxer? I mean, how are you doing? I'm assuming it's an asynchronous kind of like platform that you can go and answer easily on. And is it video and audio, or is it just text? What are the tools that you're using?
Yeah, I overthink tools so much. Um, I thought, oh, there's a tool called Clarity Flow by my friend Brian Castle, which was originally called Zip Message and specifically made for like asynchronous coaching, but
Hmm.
it's kind of moved in a different direction. And so I thought, is this something that I really want to pay a bunch of money for every year? And then the learning curve is a little higher because people have to create an account and stuff like that. And so, but I also don't want to give people my phone number, right? My phone number is mine. I have a
Yeah.
Google Voice number if people want to text me, but there are enough asynchronous messaging platforms out there that nobody needs my phone number. And I just decided, thanks to Kat Mulvihill actually, to go with Zoom Team Chat.
Mm.
Okay.
Everybody already has a Zoom account, right? I mean, like this is like it's a near universal thing. It's almost like do you have a Google account? Of course you do,
Yeah.
Right.
right? And so they don't have to create a new account. I invite them to a private chat in Zoom. And so there's texting. But then you can send audio messages and you can send short video messages. What I'll usually do there is record the video in Tela and upload it or embed it. Because you get a little longer. Well, there's like I think a 1 minute limit on video in Zoom. Makes sense. They don't want to host a bunch of video without you paying for it. And so that's generally what I'll do. We'll have a Zoom chat and, they can ask in the format they're most comfortable with, and I can answer in, I think, whichever one makes sense. If it's a quick answer, I'll usually text back, or voice note it, and if it's, something more nuanced, I'll usually send a video, and then, like, highlight the key takeaways from the video.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nice. I love that. We have some great comments around what we were just talking about too. Rich Watts says, totally agree. Not everyone who's willing to pay you should be a client. He learned to say no when his gut tells him, and he totally agrees with family first as well. And then Dustin Stout of Magi also says, ooh, overthinking tools is something we are not a fan of. Life should be simpler. So I love that. I love that you can use a tool like Zoom and kind of get this up and running really, really quickly. So Joe, do you see this as this on-demand coaching as something that's going to become a bigger trend? I would think so. We're so busy, finding a commitment to put on your calendar and stuff can often be the hardest part when it comes to these coaching things. So do you see on-demand coaching becoming a bigger trend, and what advice would you give to people that might want to start